Hi, everybody, and welcome. So glad you're with us today. My name is Stephen McCrocklin, and I'm the Executive Director of WeTeachReading.com, a division of Langsford Learning Acceleration Centers. We've worked with over 3,000 kids to help them become better readers. And during that time, we've had so many families ask us, how do we do what we do? How do we guide students to have so much improvement in their reading in such a short period of time? So today, I'm going to talk about that. So first off, I want to let you know that I work with a great team of over 30 dedicated people who are driven to help kids become better readers. So that is certainly part of our special sauce for sure. Also, the students we work with are really incredible, and I remain incredibly proud of them. They really are the heroes, and today you're going to learn about them firsthand. So first off, meet Martin. Martin is a math and science whiz. Caroline loves swimming and gymnastics. James has an incredibly positive attitude, a creative thinker, always thinking outside the box, outgoing and fun, kind of a ham in really all the good ways, as you can see from this picture. They all attended great schools. They have invested teachers and involved parents. They have strong verbal skills, and they're hard workers. Here are two middle school students. Tommy, a straight A student, super strong cognitive abilities. He works hard, was never once late to his learning sessions, and he was responsible for getting and attending on his own. He loves lacrosse, cycling, track. And Carly loves basketball and dance, water skiing and tubing. You'd be impressed by any of these kids if you were to meet them, for sure. And as these students progress through school, what we want for them is for them to make good, steady progress. For each year of school, you'd expect a year of progress. And that is what we want to see for kids, but that doesn't happen for some. Some kids get stalled out in their reading, and they just don't grow out of that problem. Often a parent or teacher can see that gap, but they assume it'll just work itself out over time. And that was the case for each of the students you just met in their reading development stalled out. And so let's look in more depth at that. So for Martin, he guessed at words because he couldn't sound them out. He read every night, and this is what his dad said, I read every night, but it's just not coming along. He was also what we call a Friday speller. And that is where he can, with practice, memorize the words up to a pretty nice level, even perfect. But then a week or two later, he's forgotten the words and it's like they never studied them. Caroline, she would know a word one day, but then not the next. Or she'd know it even that same day, but then not recognize it on a different page. There were tears at homework times, and she said she felt like other kids were smarter. She gets frustrated and say, I just can't lock the words away in my brain. Everyone else can. And James, he had tutored for 2 years, still had difficulty with phonics. His reading was disfluent, and his reading problems were causing comprehension problems. In the end, reading was hard for all three. And what they had in common was the difficulty sounding out words for reading and spelling. They had weak reading, paragraph reading, accuracy and rate and fluency, and they just started to dislike school. So this, sadly, is a typical trajectory. We see it often. Reading can be hard. Tommy, his comprehension score on the yearly whole school test was going down year over year. He didn't like to read and had not read an unassigned book in over 4 years. He becomes sort of a literal thinker and didn't read between the lines well. Carly, her teachers at school said she was having trouble understanding her schoolwork and that she didn't ask questions when she was confused and didn't understand because she didn't want to admit to it and call attention to herself. This just wrecks kids. It erodes their confidence. and shapes how they see school and the world. It really impacts the whole family. Parents go to bed at night and they stare at the ceiling worrying about, how their child's going to make it through the rest of school and what that means, for their future. And I know this struggle. I had reading difficulties, and I know the toll it took on my parents and my teachers and me. So, why is reading so hard? Well, first off, reading's not a natural process. It's an invention. It's a creation. We arbitrarily invented this idea of taking language in through vision, and further, the expectations of our reading abilities increase each year as we go through school. So underline that not everyone has the prephonics abilities of perceiving all the sounds that make up spoken words. And even if you do, then you've got to map those sounds, those 44 sounds, to 26 alphabet letters that make up, our language system. And that whole mapping of sounds to letters turns out to be a really complicated seating chart. And it's really almost silly. Like, some letters are happy to stand next to each other in a word, and other letters don't want to be near each other. And you've got to sort all that out. And you have to do that quickly and efficiently, so efficiently that you forget you're actually reading, so that you can really devote all your energy to comprehension. And frankly, that's a tall order, and we expect kids to do that well. So the first thing that happens that that makes an important difference in our model is that when a family calls in and they need help, the first thing we do is we listen. So it's in that process of listening and then asking questions that we really start to understand and learn what it is the family's concerned about. And many of the stories we hear are similar, yet that doesn't really make it any easier to hear about a child who's having difficulty. And really, after 30 years of hearing different stories, it really gets hard at times. But it's through that call and that understanding of what's going on that we can determine what the next best step is for that child. Sometimes that's a referral to another organization, like a psychologist or speech pathologist, occupational therapist, or another professional. But if the difficulties are focused around reading, we'll talk about options here. And that option here is usually to clarify the cause of the difficulty. We have to understand exactly what's getting in the way of that student's reading success. And we do that by administering a comprehensive reading evaluation. Plus, we gather information from parents and teachers and others. And then with all of that information, our diagnostic team can carefully interpret the results and pinpoint the core problems. That evaluation process uses 20 different assessment measures to look at 16 different areas. We charge $450 for that, and we can have results back to a family in 7 to 10 days. So here's how and what we're looking at. In these 16 different areas, it's important for us to really understand in order to guide a student to confident reading. Each of these areas is an important data point. Taken together, each student has a unique pattern of scores. It's not a one-size-fits-all solution. So first, we must recognize that student's unique pattern. What's really important to understand is that rarely is a reading difficulty a single layer problem. It's not about one test that then makes sort of an admission decision for one set program. That, in the end, is sort of past generation work. That's not next generation work. So think of each test like a little square tile in a mosaic picture. When put together in the right place, it creates a unique picture. And that picture describes that particular student and their learning needs. That picture describes what the student needs to become a confident reader and the right plan to help them get there. So what are the areas that we measure? There, as you can see here, phonological awareness, phonemic awareness, phonics, sight words, spelling, accuracy, that's paragraph reading accuracy, paragraph reading rate, paragraph reading fluency, vocabulary, comprehension, writing, memory, short-term and working, processing speed, attention, temperance, and visual coordination. And that breaks down even into visual perception and motor coordination. So those are the 16 different areas, and each area then gets put together so that you can see that even students who present with the same concerns turn out to have very different patterns. So here's a baseline. A score above baseline is a advantage or strength for that student, and a score below baseline is a weakness. And depending on how far down, it's either a little bit of a weakness or a lot of a weakness. But again, watch these patterns change. These are similar looking kids authentically, but quantitatively, they have very different patterns and thus very different unique needs. So what then becomes important is with this data, it's very important that it be interpreted. And it's that interpretation that it translates then into actionable steps. And this is what we're experts at. The data guides our overall approach to the student. Each score points to something actionable. So each one of those red dots is an actionable piece. But it's the patterns across and through the scores that direct the sequence of work and what pieces need to be woven together. So you can't just start anywhere and expect to get a good result. So for example, if a student has a significant weakness in both reading and comprehension, you just can't start teaching them reading skills, even if the scores are clear they really need it. The student won't efficiently understand what you're teaching, and if they don't understand the content that you're teaching well enough, they won't be able to benefit from it. They'll end up just trying to memorize a lot of rules that they can't apply well enough to become a competent reader. So ultimately, it just frustrates them rather than helping them. As I said, the patterns across the scores got us to know what learning activities must be woven together for the best result. So for example, a weakness in phonemic awareness is often accompanied with weakness in processing speed. You shouldn't wait to get to the end of the phonics work before you start fluency work if that's what they need. It should be woven together into that child's instruction early on to get a great result. If you miss that window, it's hard to help them catch up and become a confident reader. Most reading difficulties like to have company. So it's super important to understand what that company is and address it appropriately. This way of administering and interpreting evaluation is a critical part of helping a kid become a confident reader. So very often the next question is, what programs do we teach? And to that, I say, and want to clear up some confusion, is we don't teach programs. We absolutely understand programs that are published, like Orton Gillingham and its derivatives like Wilson or Barton and many more. We also understand other approaches like Linda Bell and Great Leaps and Handwriting Without Tears and interventions that speech pathologists use and occupational therapists use. So with all that, why don't we teach programs? Well, here's the thing. Programs are fundamentally limited in very important ways. Programs are one-size-fits-all templates. So the result of that is that too much time ends up being spent on something the student needs less time on, and then not enough time on the things that the student really needs more of or even most of. Second, programs are fidelity focused, which means if you're focused on implementing, and even the more and more focused, you're focused on implementing the program exactly as the author wants it, it's then hard to focus on the needs of that individual student. So if you're looking at implementing the program, you've really taken your eyes off the student and what they need. And then the student is left having to meet you where you are rather than you meeting the student where they are. And that's a fundamentally different concept. And third, published programs are typically very slow. For example, the Barton program, which is popular in many areas and continues to grow in popularity, is typically a 3 to 4 year program that is in excess of 200 to 300 hours. We don't think that most kids have that number of years to catch up. For every year a child is gapped, even if they're progressing at a slower rate or gapped from their peers, they're getting farther behind. And that, frankly, is more than double the amount of time it takes us. And we weave into the instruction other areas of need like penmanship and fluency work. So again, in the end, a program turns out to be a very dull tool for precision work. The scope and sequence is set by a program developer who's never met that student. And it doesn't necessarily respond to the assessment work that you may have done previously. Like, does the student need more phonemic awareness, or does the student need phonemic awareness at all? Or do they need both? Do they need fluency work? And if yes, when should that fluency work be brought in? Do you bring it at the beginning, partway through? Like, what level of stability is it right for that child to bring that in? And what about comprehension? Can that happen after the reading work is done if they need it, or does it need to happen before, as we talked about? And what about penmanship? Do you need to get a base in that before you start working on letters, or can you work on letters and then sharpen that in? All those things need to be figured out based upon that individual students and their pattern of scores. So there's so much more that needs to happen than what a published program can offer to help a child develop the joy of reading and to become a confident reader. So in our model, we custom tailor a plan for each child based upon what we know about the child and the scientifically based reading research. With that, we can then move to a plan. After we've clarified the cause of the difficulty, we then share a plan of action with the family. This plan is delivered to the parents in a meeting. We share the results and explain the specific recommendations. And our plan is really a straight up the mountain plan. We have a starting point, we have an ending point, and we go directly from one to the next. And it's very unusual. I think most families we talk to have had experience with starting tutoring, and there's a clear starting date, but that tutor rarely starts by saying, here's your ending date. Here's what we're going to do between here and there, and I'm going to give you progress updates, at regular intervals through as we approach that goal. And our starting dates are very reliable. We've done this with over 3,000 kids. We really know how to predict and plan for that based upon other students we've seen. And our goal is to close that gap quickly. We don't want to spend years doing that. We really want to do this in terms of weeks. We're also a no contract organization. No strings attached, stop at any time. Next is targeted instruction. How you implement what's going on matters. So with the needs pinpointed and a clear plan in hand, the instruction is targeted. And then that guides the student through the plan. So this model, this targeted instruction, is not just about assigning a teacher to a student and then letting them figure it out on their own. That turns out not to work nearly as well as if there's a team of people working with one student where many people are putting their heads together and delivering a coordinated plan. So for example, the instructors are highly trained in implementing a plan of action. And that plan of action is written by, carried out, and monitored by a learning specialist. So think about maybe a fire department showing up at a house that may have a fire going. So how that looks is then a fire crew gets out of the fire engine and then they take a hose in the house. And that whole time there's a captain standing beside the fire truck looking at the house. So you don't want the captain who's coordinating the fire to be in the house with the hose because they can't see the larger picture. But you also can't have the tactical team of firemen outside the fire engine looking at the house burn. So you have to divide roles up where you have a tactical component that's actually carrying out the work, and then another person who's not in the house fighting the fire, but monitoring, coordinating, planning, and kind of running the team. So that's the model here. Also, that captain monitoring the fire, so to speak, comes up with a plan every 5 hours. So our learning specialist that we think of sort of like a head coach, every 5 hours is planning out the next 5 hours of that student's instruction. We do progress reports with families every 20 hours, and we keep in contact with school. And again, managing a team is also integral to a student's success. We want the classroom teacher to be involved and know what that student's working on. We don't want a parent stuck in the middle trying to coordinate all that. We want to help that happen, of course, with the parent's permission. We want the family to be closely included so they know what that student's working on, so they know how to assist at home. And we do a parent workshop as part of bringing that group together. So there are a lot of parts involved in that targeted instruction to make it work. But it's also a true one-to-one learning session where there's one student and one instructor working live one-to-one. That instruction can be in person. Right now, it's primarily online. And we get the same results either way. We've tracked the progress very carefully, and students who are doing online work are getting the very same outcomes on our assessment metrics, whether they're in line or on person. I think it's really important to understand that to transform someone's reading, it does take something significant. And that is true in any way a person transforms themselves. It's something significant is happening, and this is absolutely true in reading. And any transformation really is a hero's journey. It's something that must be done at some level to become whole. And frankly, these kids know that something isn't right and that they want coaching from someone capable to guide them through this transformation. And I know I did, and I see it in the kids that come through our door. Our job is to guide the student through it successfully, to help them navigate the obstacles that are in their way, to encourage, to nurture, and to support. They do this work, and the friction they may hit helps them build strength. It lets them do the work that's necessary to build some grit and some competence. And I mean true competence, not the kind that comes, it's the kind that comes from having earned it because they have mastered the work. It's not the kind that comes from adults around them telling them that they're good kids. They hear that. What they want to do is feel what it feels like to accomplish something that they put some work into and get the real, like, the real internal lift that comes when you feel empowered. That's what this work brings to kids. So one ingredient to make sure and help a child become successful is daily training. If you want to learn to play the piano, or you want to run a marathon and you're training a day or two a week, you're never going to become a competent pianist or a marathon runner. It's that daily work that builds up success. And with the right guide and training, you really do get success. They can crack this complicated language and become competent doing daily work. Athletes know this, musicians know this, and anyone trying to learn a foreign language does this. Daily practice is important. And when someone develops a level of competence, it's that leads them to a level of confidence. That's part of the magic of it. We also know that waiting doesn't work, that late bloomers just wilt. And that was an article written by the American Federation of Teachers. Progress does not mean catching up. And I can't tell you the hundreds of families that have told me that their child's making progress, and they look at that through a comprehensive reading evaluation. You realize that yes, they're making progress, but their same age peers are making much faster progress. And that means that they're getting farther behind. Yes, they're sort of like the marathon runner. If everyone's running 3 miles an hour and another student's running 1 mile an hour, yes, that's making progress, but the gap's getting wider. And that just leads to a wilting reader. So let's talk about what this transformation looks like. Lasting gains. Martin, when he finished his work, was 100% accurate at a grade level passage. He said he feels like he's ready for 3rd grade. The most amazing piece was his writing sample, which we didn't directly work on, yet it included proper mechanics, dialogues, a full storyline, and he spent 30 minutes working on it. It was an untimed test. He's not told how much time he has. He just wanted to write a great story and had a lot to say. That was very different than initially. Caroline, she became a completely new little girl when it came to reading. Her confidence grew immensely, and her parents said it was worth every penny and every minute of commitment to watch her grow and blossom. And James, reading on grade level. He enjoys reading. His reading on his own for enjoyment is something he would never have done, and his comprehension tested above grade level. For Tommy, 3 years of gain on his comprehension, and he started to read for fun. Carly, comprehension skills moved to a high average level. Her mom said in a note to us, Langsford has been a blessing. My daughter's reading comprehension was 2 years behind in the struggle that would have manifested itself over time, creating big hurdles for her learning. The skills they have taught her are going to help her lifelong. So in summary, we help kids become confident readers. Our goal is to bring clarity to a family about their child's reading need. There's no obligation beyond that. If the family wants to move forward, it's simple to get help. Call, schedule, and meet. Call us. You can also go to the website, weteachreading.com, and there's a button that says schedule an assessment. You can just click that. It'll bring you to a window where you can automatically schedule that and take care of everything that needs to happen for that evaluation. And then after the evaluation, the time is set to go over those results. If the results make sense to a family and a family wants to move forward, we'll target instruction that'll create a lasting gain. It really is, as I said, really the biggest honor we have are working with these just incredible kids, and to have a hand in guiding them to become a competent reader. Thank you so much for attending. If you have questions, feel free to reach out to us at info@weteachreading.com. That's info@weteachreading.com. And we'd love to answer any questions you have. Thanks so much and have a great evening.